Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're talking about Lobotomy 2.
Manhunt.
Have you ever thought to yourself you belong in an insane asylum?
Not me per se, but definitely you.
Okay. Have you ever considered breaking out of said asylum once you get in there?
No, you were going to stay there for the rest of the life.
Alright, well in Lobotomy 2 you're going to be exploring the concept of being trapped in an insane asylum. Now, it doesn't sound as pleasant as that makes it seem. Here, the world and your mind are going to be working against you, twisting reality into some sort of cacophony.
Of a horror show, basically.
Whether or not the creepy things you're seeing in front of you are real, or
just your mind playing tricks on you.
Just your mind playing tricks on you. This is a dungeon crawl, a delve into either a campaign exploration, asking those very questions, what happens when the world is unstable, and as far as you can tell, your life is in danger.
Or one-time scenarios that you can play at different difficulty levels.
Yeah, this is taking everything that the community has given feedback on from Lobotomy, the original core game, and the creators have really listened and applied a ton to the table here. And I have to start this preview off by acknowledging I have not even started to dive into most of the content here in front of us on the table. The prototype is jam-packed, and don't get me wrong, this is a prototype.
Yeah, all of these boards are double-sided. There are huge decks of weapons, huge decks of equipment.
Yeah.
There are so many monsters to fight. There's so many players to play as. And like he said, it's just a prototype.
It's very, very impressive. So here's what I want to do in this preview video. I want to set up for you what Lobotomy 2 Manhunt is. I want to talk about what the things I'm excited about it, some of the things that make it unique from other dungeon crawls in this genre, and then I want to highlight a little bit more in detail some of the rules, some of the components, some of the flow, like gameplay, actual flow, like what you'll be doing on your turn, and then finally we'll close off by, well, encouraging you to go check this out. There'll be a link down below where you can follow the campaign and get some more information on this insane game. I'm going to be following along for all of the different extras, bonuses, expansions that they add into this, because it is ridiculous. So, Lobotomy 2. Let's start by talking about some of the concepts that make it different from regular dungeon crawls, because people are familiar with what a dungeon crawl is. A dungeon crawl is where you're going through, well, a dungeon, exploring, unlocking doors, knocking things in, spawning enemies, and of course doing your best to take down those enemies, and eventually take down a boss or a series of bosses. But there's a lot of stuff in here that makes this feel different in some really important and key ways.
One of the most important things that I want to highlight is the difficulty moderators. Modifiers, moderators. These are going to allow you to scale up your difficulty from easiest to easier to hard to hardest. And they're not just things that like adding in more bad guys and spawning more bad guys. They're going to mess with the amount of time you have to play the game. They're going to mess with the amount of resources that you have playing the game, different upgrades and things. It just is a really cool way.
The concept of a set of cards where you spawn one of these cards, for instance, medication time. If you want to do it as the easiest mode, characters receive one extra every time they gain medicine, including at a game setup. If you want to do it on easier, each character starts with 2 medicine instead of the usual 1. But then we start scaling. Harder, characters start the game with no medicine. Hardest, when searching the locker, the cost of medicine is doubled.
Yeah.
And these are modified in a whole similar way. We have tough enough, time flies slowly, a matter of speed, so many of them, one man's junk, and they moderate different levels or core systems in the game, meaning you can mix and match. You can make one element that you don't enjoy as much a little bit easier, while also emphasizing how difficult it can be to find junk, upgrade weapons, how strong your bosses are, how far you can move. I think this is a really unique approach to moderating how difficult a dungeon crawl is. I really like that element of this game.
Another thing that's interesting about this one is that there's a time tracker with this warden who is going to be taking steps each turn and unveiling different events that are going to affect gameplay.
Yeah.
So like this one is all characters must take for knowledge test. Spawn a hellhound on the same space as each character that failed the test. The hellhounds activate normally this round.
So the Warden system here is going to be something from the original Lobotomy system. It's something that a lot of people really loved, and here they've brought it back and emphasized it even more. This is going to be changed and adjusted based on what type of boss or scenario you're playing, and I guarantee that Warden deck is going to become more interesting throughout the course of the campaign. But what's cool about this is the Warden is going to be your pressure point, not only for driving endgame, not only for whatever objective you're trying to accomplish or prevent from accomplishing, but also the Warden's going to be driving endgame when it comes to everything escalating. Bosses and baddies coming onto the board and getting harder, but also your own personal characters being able to start on their regular side and flip over to their significantly more powerful side.
The 6th step on the time track is always going to be this aura of insanity. All monsters with the empowered version on the reverse side of their monster card become stronger, flip their monster cards to the empowered side, and the characters are now able to use their upgraded character action to become insane. However, that is only if they have completed their individual quests.
Yep.
This card will remain in play. And so this is always the 6th. So halfway through the game, you're going to have the option to flip over to your insane side, and that basically makes you more powerful.
So there's a few other things that we need to highlight and talk about. 2 of which that I want to touch on are going to be weapons, junk, and how you actually start upgrading and exploring the, well, lobotomy lab here, the insane asylum, if that's what they want to call it. And I also want to be able to talk about, where is it right here, the daily nightmare scenarios. So I want to dive into those. I think you should probably highlight the characters here and specifically the disorder cards we have. So let me start with equipment and weapons.
Sure.
Classic Dungeon Crawl is going to be going through a series of gear. These are going to be items, extra superfluous things that you get, and of course weapons that you can upgrade. You're always going to start with the handy straitjacket. You always need one of those with you, and then a classic piece of weapon, the thing that you probably broke out of your cell with, like a broken glass bottle. But the cool thing about this game is it doesn't stick to the mundane. You start getting an insane slew of things that you can use. Archaeologist whip, a deep sea trident, a body piece, Amazonian spear, guitars, battle cross, sniper rifles, mage staffs, double guns, M16s, monkey staffs, and so much more. I haven't seen a repeat,
honestly, through this deck.
The cool thing about these weapons is not only are they potentially figments of your imagination as you're spawning an M16 to pull the trigger and rake down some other imaginary baddies that you're facing off against, but also corresponding to your skill check on your player cards, which we can pull over here, we're all going to have your 4 core skill icons.
Yep.
And in relation to those, you'll be able to use and become more proficient at each one of these weapons as you play the game. Here's the cool thing. Unlike Lobotomy 1, here in Lobotomy 2, you're actually going to be searching the Insane Asylum for gear, weapons, items, and most particularly, junk. Every weapon has an upgrade range, and depending on how proficient you can be at that weapon, what your current skill is, which you can raise throughout the course of the game, you're going to be able to spend junk in order to get more proficient abilities on the weapons that are your favorite to use. So instead of grabbing the Archaeologist whip and then discarding it for an M16 down the road, you actually get to hold on to that piece of gear. You get to become really skilled at it, and you get to utilize it better and better and better throughout the course of play. I really like not only how weird and crazy the gear cards are, but also how that skill and upgrade system works with them.
I'm going to talk about the players. So the characters, or the patients that you can play as, they each have their own personal quest. So this one is Ian McFellow. His quest is to die. Interestingly enough, dying in this scenario does not take you out of the game. You get to respawn on your next turn.
No, it's not all good. It's not all
you
good.
are taking time ahead every time you do so.
Yeah, it's definitely not good.
Each patient has their own specific disorders that are characterized to them. And so this one is schizophrenia and anxiety neurosis. Those are going to be separate decks that you're going to be drawing cards both at the beginning of the game, and you have options to draw through them throughout the game, and you are going to have abilities. Each of these cards is going to give you more and more powers and abilities.
I just had thought to myself, having OCD or schizophrenia or aggression was possibly a negative thing. Turns out, in this game, it is your greatest strength. These abilities have a fascinating concept of playing from your hand, cycling, getting refresh tokens on them that might take them a little bit longer to get back into the action play, and giving you passive and aggressive abilities.
Yep. On your card, you're also going to have your base actions that you can do, and they will cost different amounts of insanity. Insanity is actually a resource. As you roll dice, both in attacking and defending, any insanity symbols that you roll will be tokens that you can have a maximum of 6. It's going to be a resource that you can spend both to upgrade yourself, upgrade all these different types of things. And so you can spend insanity to do these actions over here. Once you flip over to your insane side, your actions stay the same, but you have increased stats over here. And then at the very bottom, you have a different piece of flavor text. If they ask you if you are still seeing things that are not there, lie, you fools.
Sounds reasonable. So let's focus a little bit more in on these disorder cards, because these are some of the things that surprised me the most.
Yeah.
Disorders are going to be powers and abilities, and every character is going to be proficient to different decks of disorders, and I expect to see more than just this when it comes to the actual final game. So instead of having these be negative attributes to the insane patients that you're playing as, you actually use them as superpowers. Like I said, when you draw up, you're going to be able to pool and spend insanity to draw more disorder cards into your hand, and these will have a series of cool effects. Some of them are going to be immediate. They're going to boost your stats, give you extra bonuses, more movement, more actions, more anything.
Yep.
Some of them are going to be passive, that are going to be able to lock in next to your screen, giving you permanent effects. And then there's the concept of playing the card and having a refresh timer on it.
Yep. So let's say this Mutant Mass. Its passive ability, it gives you 1 strength.
Not bad.
However, you can spend 0 action points to activate it, and you can get +3 strength until the end of your turn. However, once you activate it, then you will place 4 cooldown tokens on top of it, and every round you will be taking 1 cooldown token off. So basically it's out of play for the next 4 rounds. It doesn't leave, and you can get rid of it or trade it, but the cooldown tokens stay.
What I've found is the decision to go through this is always up to the player. You start with a few of them, but you're able to actually dig into them if you want this to be the core way that you play. And it's really fun to figure out what extra abilities you get and how you start chaining those with cooldown tokens, timing for a turn or two for you to be able to pop that one more time, but also combine it with a brand new weapon, a brand new skill, an ability, or that moment when you're facing off against the boss. These lead to some amazing escalation moments where you feel super insane and super powerful, like you've broken the game. But remember, because the cooldown system, it's only going to last for that turn right then. So we've mentioned a few times that this is a campaign game. I haven't been able to focus on how this is also a one-shot game. The game's built around this concept of playing through the insane asylum and discovering different baddies and creatures and monsters and unveiling the story. And while I love campaign games, I have to admit they're a little bit harder to get to the table, which is why this is also a game that provides you with a really interesting way to do one-shots. Not only does it have a core campaign structure and booklet, which you could always pull off the shelf and toss down in front of you to play through any single scenario, you also have the idea of daily nightmares. Daily nightmares are going to be spawn cards. They generate an atmosphere for you to play in, and these create your narrative. For instance, I could pull one here. Boy, oh boy. It gives me different locations where I'm setting up the game, gives me what cards and what scenario to reference, and at different stages of that scenario, it tells me what flavor text or what pieces of information to go unveil in the core Lord book or in the daily scenario book. This creates a new and sort of stringing, kind of intertwining set of puzzles that you can play with. So it's taking the idea of generating one-off random scenarios, giving you a framework to do it with, and then also letting you know that if you want to play with one daily scenario,
you can also add in another, and you can do a couple of them. You can
if you want
have
to play
a baby
the real
nightmare,
game,
or you can have a full freaking nightmare with 4 different scenarios going on.
recommends 4 of these happening at the same
Or more, it said.
Yeah. Or more. Probably not more. Let's definitely not do
More.
This game is absolutely insane. It's hyper ambitious, has some really cool elements happening in the dungeon crawl space, and for me has me incredibly excited. Let's talk a little bit more in depth about what people are going to be actually going through and doing when it comes to the course of play, and then I think that's a preview.
Course of play, basically, the patients are going to take their turn. Every patient is going to have 3 action points that they can spend to move, to attack, to upgrade, and do various things, trade, and upgrade their cards.
Now, the game's balanced around playing with at least 3 patients on the table, meaning more abilities. Kind of similar to games like Kingdom Death or Zombicide. I haven't had a problem running multiple patients, and I would even encourage people who are playing to run 1 or 2, because one might just spend their turn searching, upgrading, or refreshing, while another
might be spending it attacking and taking down some really bad baddies.
Which is fun to do.
So the patients are going to have their turn, and then the monsters are going to have their turn, and they are going to move, and they are going to attack in different levels of hierarchy. There are both basic monsters, there are elite monsters, and then there's boss cards. And while the basic ones seem pretty easy to take down, I think there's going to be so many of them that it's going to be overwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah. So that's going to be the classic flow of the game. The other things that you're going to be paying attention to are searching for junk, upgrading, rolling dice to resolve hits. Every weapon's going to have sort of a custom scale of dice that get certain conditions, meet certain hits, and you can modify that as you play. But no, it's a classic dungeon crawl. One of the most interesting things about each scenario, though, is it's not just a win-loss, death, not death. You already heard one character specifically wants to die. It's a little bit weird when you just see him run out naked into the middle of a hallway and ask for people to stab him.
He's wearing underwear.
I repeat what I've said. It's a little weird when you see him run out naked into a hallway and ask for people to stab him. And the orderlies are happy to do so. Actually, the wardens. I don't know if there are orderlies other than the giant boss warden up there.
Orderlies.
There they are.
Yep.
There they are. It was the giant tentacle that made me
question
forget
whether
exactly,
they were an orderly.
Exactly what they were named. So the cool thing about the scenarios here is that it's not just a straight win-loss on live, die, defeat the bad guy or not. There's actually conditions based on what scenario you're playing, and if you're playing through the campaign mode, that gives you different conditions for winning, oftentimes corresponding to the big warden track over there, depending on when he's hit certain tropes and where things have been pressured. But you might even have some situations where you haven't entirely won or lost a scenario. Anything else you want to add, or is that a preview?
That's a preview. I mean, I can just go on and on about the miniatures and the details that are on them. I mean,
the miniatures look amazing.
Look at him. He's got a cage inside his stomach.
The miniatures look
with
absolutely
hands that are coming out. He puts people
Did you
inside
see?
his stomach.
So we have some of like what I perceive to be the creator's favorite IPs in here. We have Breaking Bad. We have Wicked Jimmy down here. We have freaking BioShock like under the sea type of individual.
So
we have Chucky here, which is called Buddy down there. The Wendigo. If you like weird, twisted horror fantasy, this game is celebrating every single one of your desires, and the miniatures look absolutely fantastic. The poses are dynamic. The sculpts are super detailed. If you're a mini painter or you just want some like really cool models to play with, yeah. Other than that, I think that's a preview. I want to get some gameplay down onto the table. I'm hoping like mid-campaign or so we'll be able to sit down and actually record a full scenario.
Yep.
So keep us posted. I mean, honestly, if we get enough engagement in the comments and the likes down here, we'll definitely make sure we sit down and get either a Daily Nightmare scenario or start playing through the campaign. So one of the two. Either way, whatever the case,
whatever you do,
remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. We'll see you next time.